First off, I would like to thank you for coming. And although each of my fingers is a fetus of jet lag, all the more the better, you know. It is exciting to be reading at 3 a.m. my time. And I wanted to say that literature is a series of serendipitous events. And long ago I stopped marveling at that. You know, I finished this book, this novella, the day before my second son was born, and then I thought, well, I can just as well give birth now I'm ready. And, well, literature is also a series of serendipitous acquaintances. Had it not been for my faithful literary friend Eric, who had written me a letter 8-9 years ago and offered me literary friendship, I would have never met John, who is his friend, and had I never met John, I would never have met Miet, who liked my work well enough to want to publish it. A couple of words about Duchess, what it is. What I do, basically, I self-proclaim to be historical burlesque. I work with historical events, I do a lot of research, and then I mash it up and I process it in my own way to do a work of fiction. As already said, I was born in the Soviet Union, in a failed industrial giant of a city, Zaporozhye. Will say nothing to you. It used to be a 1 million city, and when all Jews left, there were maybe 700,000 left. Zaporozhye is famous for its great dam that stands on the even greater river Dnieper, and it was built by the same engineer who built the Hoover Dam. And it was quite an exciting story. The dam was built as well, it was a sample of industrialization, and it was built under the conditions of Stalin's purges. And there is this protagonist who is a distitled Duchess. Back then, after the revolution, all this strict hierarchy of classes and ranks got mixed up, and all incredible marriages appeared that wouldn't have been possible before the revolution, and incredible careers sparked off. I'm going to read from the beginning to give you a foretaste of the novel. In my lack of imagination, I didn't think of anything better, but I hope the choice is not the worst. So, Duchess. Iosif Vissarionovich Stalin fancied hydropower, the water muscle of Soviet industry. He squiggled in his notes. He summoned mechanic cats and the best engineers of Moscow to his study. Thrice, the word Zaporozhye seeped through his pepper and salt mustache. But we have neither technology nor qualified staff to build the Dnieper Dam, implored the best engineers in chorus, their eyes wandering from their shoes to the portrait of Lenin on the wall, right above Chieftain Stalin's head. And what do you think, Comrade Katz? Iosif Vissarionovich asked the main mechanic of Gunpowder Factory, the renowned revolutionary Chaim Katz. Of all the Bolsheviks, this Katz had made the most incendiary contribution to putting an end to the old way of things. He had organized the smuggling of explosive for sieging the Tsar's palace, for fighting at the barricades. I'm a simple stoker, Comrade Stalin, said Katz. I don't know much about hydropower. But I know our Soviet workers are the best in the world. It is them who must build the dam. Well said, Comrade Katz, said the chief, lighting up his pipe. So be it. The best engineers of Russia didn't dare to exchange glances. And who is the best engineer of river dams in the world? Stalin inquired. An American, Hugh Winter, replied the last Tsar's Minister of Industry, ex-Count Alexandrov, trying his best not to stutter. You said it. We shall tow this winter here across the ocean, and you, so-called engineers, incapable sycophants, will be under his command. Katz, you are appointed superintendent. Pack your suitcase, and when you're finished, I will come and look at our dam myself. Chaim Katz went pale, and the first gray hair lit up on his temple. Thank you for putting your communist trust in me, Comrade Stalin, he said. Impossibly, randomly as the high wind hit, the engineers, stone-struck against the wall, knocked on the oak panels in their minds. Good riddance. If anyone's head was to fall, it was this upstart head of a Katz. By the way, Katz, Chief added, raising himself from the table, don't forget to bring this posh wifey of yours with you. It's high time she was of some use to her renewed motherland. And Iosif Vissarionovich Stalin smiled with all his poxed furrows, bidding the conference goodbye. It is a matter of hours for the rails from both ends to meet. Ready to run endless rail cars would growl for the greatest water mincer in the state of proletarians. Shiny and taut tick the gear trains of muscles. The bone cogs click under the clock-faced chests. Men's mullet-ended arms turn madly around the shoulder pivots, bolting each second into the iron rails. Shudders erect the quarries with gritty fountains. The workers' jaws freeze in frenetic grins. Women knead concrete with their feet. Steel buckets descend on them right out of the myopic sun, ladle the grey porridge, lifted on September rays and swayed through the air to spew the brew into the mammoth bowls for whatever foundations, whatever spillways, whatever piers. Twice, thrice in a shift, a worker is carried away, covered with burlap from head to feet, his chest squashed by a granite block. Once a fortnight, a drowned surveyor breaks the surface of the river. Those who disappear are rumored to have been caught in the pour of the concrete and entombed in the dam for eternity. Along the banks stand slow oaks, wiggly willows, sprinkler limes, which long ago lost count and sequence of the steppe conquerors. The White Army or the Red, left socialists, Makhno gangs, or partisan volunteers. Civil war lasted a tiny but unpleasant spell of 5 growth rings. So the slow timbers barely acknowledged that it was over, that the political power has firmly settled with the Bolsheviks. Listless at the fall equinox of 1929, they dazzled the riverbanks with their gold, as if buying themselves off any further bloodshed. Building fever has seamlessly followed the Civil War. The dismembered country is now being stitched together by electric cables, securely welded by steel, gagged by concrete. Zaporozhye is exactly in the middle between the capital Moscow and Odessa at the Black Sea, the wild Dnieper parting the 2 buttocks of the banks. This backwater town suddenly promises to become the 3rd largest city of the new empire. A reporter from Moscow aims at the workers with his Kodak. Happier, happier, do our Dnieper song, urges Daria Katz, ex-Duchess Voronchina, her gaunt outline bas-reliefing against a wall of expensive pink tuff. The future machine hall, a wonder of constructivist avant-garde. Her cropped hair, strawberry blonde, merges with the stone into a huge lion mane. Man said to the river Dnieper, "I will lock you by the wall, so that falling from the summit, water tamed like wayward horse, quickly moves the modern vehicles, pushing trams and trains along." Obediently, the workers wail the song, but the river drowns the words in its barking, froth on its muzzle, like a wolfhound bitch on heat in her father's kennels. Daria wrote the lyrics herself. She even composed the tune and then drilled the song into the staff at long trade union meetings with militia guards on the flanks. It is her duty as Dnieper Dam personal manager and head of propaganda to boost the morale on the construction site, to invent peppy slogans and write theme songs for performing at work. Her responsibility is also translating, mediating between the superintendent and the best engineer of dams in the world. At their first tour of the construction site, their two aged leather suitcases still unopened, her husband unfolded a carpenter's instrument kit. This, Daria, is a chisel. It's forced into wood to cut it. These are wrenches. We use them to provide grip and mechanical advantage in applying torque to turn objects, usually screws, nuts, and bolts. Katz screws no winches and drives me nuts, she mocks with a solemn face. In fact, Daria loves detail. If it concerned the minutest trifles of a dress cut, a frill, a breast dart, a ruffle, or a hem, she would know the words with equal perfection in Russian, English, and French. She could exactly tell Persian silk from Chinese, Peruvian wool from English. Fashion aside, were it poetry or fiction, she would be able to discern their minutest style nuances, capering freely within three literatures. Text memories evoke recognizable mellow tastes on her tongue. Even with the propaganda poems she scrolls for survival, she knows how to enjoy herself. She also knows how to wield the available, palatable supply of manpower. When she met the best engineer of dams at the railway station, her insight pleasantly warmed to medium rare. At the end of a 2-minute small talk, she sensed that Mr. Winter, skipping the intermediate phases, was already overcooked. The next day in his cottage, Hugh Winter tried to coax her out of a victory nap with an enlightening hydraulic speech corroborated by a different textbook in English and brand new. Near the bottom of the dam wall, Daria, there is the water intake. Gravity causes it to fall through the penstock inside the dam. At the end of the penstock, there is a turbine propeller, which is turned by the moving water. The shaft from the turbine goes up into the generator, which produces the water, the power. Even awake, she would not be able to tell a generator from a turbine. The stages of the great construction site hung in her mind in maggot abstraction, more buzzwords of the day than anything real. Rock clearance, grout curtain, excavation. To her, Dnieper Dam was nothing but a monster porcupine of concrete with needles of steel. Daria's domain before the revolution had been the turbans of love, the rotors of desire. At the last Tsar's New Year's ball, the Pearl Hall whirled to Strauss and Chopin. Rubies glistened in pink silk and sapphires and blue brocade. Chandeliers tinkled with crystal icicles. Diadems, tiaras, earrings, bracelets scurried around and around. Untrained eyes would burst in their sockets unless they had a straw to hold on, a golden straw that wouldn't get lost in the ball storm. Who's this miracle? Daria, the debutante. And they were all ready to throw themselves at her feet for a single waltz, for a single brush of her lock against their shoulder straps. All the male members of the diplomatic corps from Brazil to Norway, the officers from lieutenants to generals, the courtiers from master of ceremony to butler blackamoors. On his Moscow promotion tour of Zorro, Douglas Fairbanks forgot all about Mary Pickford when he saw Daria Voronchina, now deprived of title but still unmarried, in her still unpawned ball dress. Daria was more of a devotee of Rudolph Valentino types, but in 1917 Rudolph Valentino was still an obscure bit part. Ex-Duchess was named in honor of her grandmother, whom the great poet Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin himself had loved madly. A squirt of poetry was no stranger to Daria herself. In 1913, she had published 3 poems in a symbolist literary magazine, Northern Lily, more due to the grace of her ivy legs around the editor's stern than to the elegance of the merits of her metrical feet. Her Excellency watches the workers just as her ancestors would watch their serfs in the fields, as if they all still belonged to her, ready to bow to the ground. For each of them, she has a file in her personnel manager's cabinet. Most of the employees are of virginally proletarian descent, but she knows exactly which of them are not. Former Tsar's gendarmes, priests, clerks, White Army officers. Their genuine files are hidden in the second rows of the shelves. Altogether, she keeps the personnel data in artistic, deliberate disarray. The moving mob exudes feral vigor, the same vigor that had executed the last Tsar a decade ago and married her to mechanic Katz, a manic Bolshevik and a Jew. The table of ranks was abolished, and with it, all the wealth of Russian highnesses and graces, replaced by a yelping comrade. Here she is, Comrade Katz, instead of Her Excellency, doing very well, meaning alive, unlike her colleagues, Tsarina's ladies-in-waiting. For now, she is safe behind the bony back of her husband, favored by the great helmsman Stalin at the moment. Unhampered by coffins, the late Duke and Duchess, gun holes in their napes, would bounce in the ravine in a Moscow suburb to behold the sight of their Jewish son-in-law, who had never wielded a fork in his life, of their only granddaughter who eats her snots, and, much worse, knows no word of English or French. As Daria has no idea of how to raise a child without an army of nannies and governesses, her girl is growing up like an urchin. Filthy, unkempt, little Manya hops about the site and hides in the quarry, braids draft horses' manes, and romps with workers' children in the barracks. Their butts sore from mother's spanking, the camp kids soon stop bullying the daughter of the personnel director and superintendent. Manya actually proved to be a robust playmate and an excellent food thief. The last nails are thrashed into iron and the rails meet. Jangling moles followed by the workers' happy cause racked Daria with infernal vibrations. A calico dress irritates her skin with the cheap fibers. 13 years have passed, but this itch is the last thing that remains unsubdued by the power of habit. The newfangled fashion relieved one from the need of a servant, not that she hadn't learned to do without them long ago. She is accustomed to pewter cutlery, to bad food, even to dirty language surrounding her around the clock. Now her teal eye lingers on an athletic Nikolai from the Digger Brigade of Cossack descent, remotely a Rudolph Valentino type. Nikolai returns her gaze, grins cockily, more with his eyebrows than his lips, yet undecided whether Cossacks are politically safe at the moment. Daria has placed his file in the second row of the upper shelf. The rapids roar like Primus stoves. There is a baker's dozen of them, each with its own name and temperament. The little rapids are called cows, and they indeed moo in the tide. The bigger rapids are one too much, grinning with granite wolf's teeth, schoolgirl claiming the highest death toll, and glutton, beside which the water is not water anymore but something hard. Glutton chases the boats past itself like hair on end. The river is a chronic storm in which each wave is forever nailed to its place, ever repeating its atrocious route since the days of yore. The water leaps upwards, and the locals call it thunder. "Who the hell has given the horse rotten hay?" yells Hypekatz. He's picking at liquid horse dung with his high boot. "If this one kicks the bucket too, you will drag the gravel on your own back. I'm not buying another horse, do you hear me, Petrol slob? Aye, comrade Hatz, do I not?" The stout Petro scratches his nape lazily and goes on to whip the mare. "No, you don't, beast. I will check the hay tonight. If it's rotten, you're fired. Hear me?" "And how well do I hear you, Comrade Katz?" Petro says, whispering quietly into his sleeve. "Fuck a Jew twice." Before the revolution, Mechanic Katz learned all about cauldrons. At revolution time, he learned all about gunpowder. Dizzy, awed with a breathtaking promotion, he gulped down all the textbooks he could find on hydroelectric stations. The principles were not difficult to grasp, but his hair endemically catching the gray of October steppe, Katz realized that the foremost vital knowledge he now had to acquire was about the slow hydraulics of the working masses, the mechanics of the folk gray matter. Katz had been quickly shown that gunpowder was much safer to handle than 10,000 proletarians gathered in one place, a volatile compilation from all over the huge ex-Russian Empire. Peasants who ran away from forced collectivization and mandatory confiscation of crops, runaway felons seeking disguise in the crowd, soldiers of defeated civil war armies, ruined merchants, petty nobility, Russians, Ukrainians, Poles, Mongols, Armenians, Finns, Tatars, Tajiks crossbreed in the damn nation's crucible, creating gene mosaics hitherto unseen. At first, when the superintendent ordered the damn village to be built, the living conditions were bearable, but now, the quantity of workers having surged from 1,000 to 10, their life became appalling. 30 to 50 people crammed in one bunkhouse, claustrophobia, hatred, and brawl. Every week, due to the workers' sloppiness, some of the finished construction fragments fell down and equipment was spoiled by bad maintenance. Culprits were sought and found or invented and punished severely, but malpractice didn't stop. To curb drunken carousals, cats declared alcohol prohibition on the dam, its results the same as in America. The workers were not allowed to leave the premises of the construction site unless they were dismissed, and dismissal was a reason enough for an execution because it usually followed a display of sabotage or wicked negligence, incompatible with the building of the first socialist state in the world. Only one thing would give them a day off: accomplishing a heroic deed of communist labor. The Dnieper Dam construction began with the launch of a field canteen for 8,000 lunches a day. Daria Katz's first dam head of propaganda experience was a slogan poem on the poster that was printed by Dam Press and hung everywhere about the workers' camp. It depicted a Degas-style Amazon in red, soaring over a frail apron down-kneaded housewife. No slaves of home kitchen we are anymore, machines will do the onerous work. We women can now knead the concrete while factory kitchens roast pork. Superintendent Katz ordered the equipment in Germany because in the USSR no one had ever heard of large capacity field canteens. The kitchen factory was purchased from the sale of wheat confiscated from 20 local villages. So the peasants of those local villages ate cats, dogs, grass, boots, and then each other. Knowing much about heat, loving the heat, Katz couldn't help caressing the broad iron hips of the cooking stove. He brushed his cheek against the white noble animal of newly delivered cauldrons, in which, if necessary, he himself could be boiled. The wise Siemens machines cut bread and vegetables, shaped meatballs, cooked, baked, and did the dishes without any human help. Still, of 8,000 lunches, only 3,000 were regularly consumed. Canny cooks stole half of the supplied meat, mixed cardboard into mincemeat to make up for the weight loss, and then shaped the diluted meatballs smaller by another third. In this way, Canny cook's children had meatballs full pork and free, and other workers' children had a chance for full pork at the price of a day's wage a pound. Horse carts delivered food on site in thermos jars, with bluish soups reeking of carrion and cesspool, so the workers preferred to live on water and bread. It took 2 years of rebukes and threats, red-handed catch and firing, before the superintendent was finally able to fairly state in the kitchen inspection protocol, laudably rare do surprises, such as cockroaches and mice, occur in the canteen food. Meanwhile, he had to allow each worker brigade of 30 men to keep their own kitchen maid in the bunkhouse who, for 15 rubles a month, cooked edible lunches, did their laundry, and satisfied their male necessities. The latter service was not kitchen maid's favorite part, and they kept complaining. Katz tried to move the she cookies to a separate women's hostel for night, but then the workers sought sex off-site and returned with their pants all aflame with glap. So the superintendent had but to reinstall the communal field wives in brigade barracks as a warrant of men's health. Katz loved touching nice things. Gradually, this love gave place to the compulsive necessity of indiscriminate tactile intimacy with the entire construction site. The superintendent puts his calloused hands on everything within his sight, like a royal taster ready to earth any peril by his own life. He fumbles the gravel from the quarry, checking whether the right caliber is in the right cart for the right pier. He checks the cart wheels. He pokes mincemeat with his fingers, defining at once the ratio of cardboard in it. Lest he faint from the miasma of 1,000 proletarians' dischargers, Katz lights a strong cigarette before approaching the latrines with a bucket of chlorine. After lunch breaks, he profusely powders each hole. He ardently tries to teach the workers to do that themselves, but they never learn to deem it necessary. Whenever a new bunkhouse is built, Haim checks if the doors are hung sturdily on latches. At the beginning of each shift, he puts his nose close to the workers' faces and sniffs their breath. At midnight, he storms into the barracks with an uncharged pistol and tramples the gamblers' cards into the earth floor. He hurls moonshine bottles against the wooden halls. Returning into the headquarters bunkhouse to his marital bed in the short hours, Katz falls asleep with his boots on. His features blatantly Jewish. His family name a caricature for a Slavic ear. The workers call him Comrade Shitpik, which is mainly to play down their fear of his short-tempered bursts.